Stephen Colbert and The Late Show canceled by CBS. Not just Stephen Colbert, but the entire franchise now dead. CBS deciding, losing, I believe it is, somewhere in the range of $100 million or $40 million in losses. A $100 million budget is not worth it for the partisan hackery and lack of laughs late night on CBS. This has become a cause in mainstream media and on the left, suggesting that it is in a response to executive pressure from the President of the United States, that free speech is under threat, that if you can't make jokes about the president without losing your job, that we're going to lose America. That's what I saw when I was on vacation, coming out of places like the New York Times and CNN. That's what I saw coming from the likes of Brian Stelter. It is total and utter BS. It is total agenda-driven propaganda and lies. And nobody can see that better than somebody who was successful in late-night television, Jay Leno, who just spoke about how you lost your audience at The Late Show.
I love political humor, don't get me wrong, but it's just what happens was people wind up cozying too much to one side or the other. Why shoot for just half an audience all the time? You know, why not try to get the whole? I mean, I like to bring people into the big picture. I don't understand why you would alienate one particular group. Just do what's funny.
And, you know, the one particular group alienated by all three late night hosts. And three is probably cutting it short because outside of Greg Gutfeld, every attempt at humor in the late night has basically been catering to a very niche audience, because the part that you're alienating is well over half of America. I thought Colin Cowherd, sports broadcaster Colin Cowherd of the Herd, said this really well on X over the last week. He said, regarding Stephen Colbert, Carson produced a show for the country. Letterman's show often felt like an inside joke. I loved both. Modern shows too often feel like they're producing shows for the coastal critics. Approval, hoping the New Yorker heaps praise. I think that is absolutely correct. But, yeah, I mean, are they catering to the same audience as Rachel Maddow? Are they catering to the same audience as MSNBC? Are they trying to just get the hardcore liberal audience? Or do they think they are in the mainstream and trying to get praise from who they think represents the mainstream? And that is people like, and publications like, The New Yorker. I mean, there was nothing funny and nothing even close to the middle at the end for Stephen Colbert. And the same could be said for Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, I don't know how much longer ABC can put up with that kind of thing as well. And when you're on a broadcast network, the design of it is for mass appeal. That's the point of mass media. Yeah, we can talk about what drives them, ideology, blinders, that kind of thing, but it should be profit. It should be audience. That's mass media, mass audience. And they kept carving it and carving it and carving it down. Thinking it was good business, thinking they were in the mainstream. I think it's interesting coming from Colin Cowherd as well because, tinfoil, two-a-days. I mean, I have no problem saying Cowherd is probably the best in the business when it comes to sports talk of framing conversations for the biggest possible audience. Now, with that, and I think he's been open about this, Cowherd will often talk about things that appeal to Los Angeles, appeal to New York. He will talk about LeBron James. But those are the biggest possible audience for him. I don't think he's doing it necessarily for coastal approval. I do think there's times when, and I think I've told Colin Cowherd this when I did this podcast, sometimes he seems to think like tech elitism and, Los Angeles culture is still mainstream, and I don't think that is. Like, you're way out of touch with the vast majority of America. I mean, that's one of the advantages of us being here, broadcasting out of Texas. I mean, when it comes to national shows that aren't broadcasting out of Los Angeles, New York, and Washington, D.C., who is it? Us? McAfee out of Indianapolis? I don't even know who else. There's some guy. Oh, Tennessee. Some guys broadcasting out of Nashville at Fox, at the Daily Wire, and some other places.
It's where Connecticut became
But,
a
I mean-
hub, too. ESPN, my old show, Dan Patrick.
And I
Cowherd-
think in the
Cowherd is in
beginning,
Chicago
Bristol,
now.
Connecticut was a. Oh, did he move? Is that a done deal? I knew it was talked about. Is he in Chicago?
I'm pretty sure he's in Chicago now.
And you bring
Which I
that,
think-
that
I
up.
think
Barstool
helps.
is out of Chicago. I definitely think it helps. And to your point, Dan, ESPN in the early days being out of Bristol, Connecticut was actually good for them.
Yeah.
Like they weren't in that New York, they weren't directly in that New York media bubble, and they were much more representative of the guys watching the television versus the people on it. Look at it now and you say, how is this representative of the audience watching you or that you want to watch you? And how is that a mass audience? And I think, you think about so many of these sports people. I mean, it's not just Stephen Colbert. It's not just Kimmel. It's like everybody's racing for the smallest possible audience. I mean, Dan Le Batard at one point had a mass audience, or at least a mass platform. It never rated very highly at ESPN. And now that audience is minuscule comparatively and completely irrelevant. Now, look, maybe you can make the argument, making appeals to a mass audience is not authentic or isn't any guide or barometer to the truth. And I would say true. Sometimes you have to say unpopular things. You got to say true. You got to say what is true regardless of what the audience wants you to say. But I think there's a cultural ability to be in touch with people to understand America instead of sermonize to America. A lot of these things aren't just about what's true or not true, but what you think. Your interpretation, that's what we all do. We give you our analysis, our opinion, our best effort at trying to arrive at the truth. And the bubble that you've secluded yourself into is so far away. You know what's funny is they always say, I remember with some of the people I just mentioned having conversations like, with the presumption that I was in a bubble, that I grew up myopically, that I grew up, with only one lens, in that the way that you grow is by exposure to other types of people and other types of points of view. And that's the antithesis of what they've all created, right? They don't live in a world of true diversity. Shallow and superficial and cosmetic diversity, perhaps, but not real diversity, like on the individual level, understanding what motivates individuals in this country. And I think they've done the exact opposite of what they set out to do, which is have exposure to a wide range of people. 2 days, put this up. I thought Charles Cooke over at National Review as well said this was, because now with the line that, this is a threat on free speech, in combination with NPR being defunded, he said, at the root, the NPR story and the Colbert story are the same. Progressives took over a product, made it so people didn't want to pay for it, whether via advertising, subscriptions, or donations, and they're now upset that it won't be perpetually bailed out by a third party. The third party for Colbert is the corporate overlords willing to sustain tens of millions of dollars in losses annually to seclude themselves from the vast majority of America. In NPR, it's that the government won't continue to subsidize this, not just minority, but radical minority point of view. And now that you don't get this, I don't get to make $15-20 million a year running losses and continue to have that entitled, subsidized lifestyle. And that's a threat to the First Amendment. That's a threat to the country. The fact that you won't support my minority point of view that nobody wants to listen to and is unprofitable. I thought it was really, really well said by Stephen Colbert. I mean, the ratings
Cooke.
We get at Fox. What did I say? Charles Cooke? What did I say?
You said Stephen Colbert. You didn't say that.
Oh, no. He's lacking in that self-awareness.
Yeah.
The ratings we get at Fox also say something about this. I mean, Greg Gutfeld absolutely smoking all of these late-night guys. And Greg comes from a point of view. There's no doubt about that. I mean, but it just shows how many people out there are desiring of that point of view. Go ahead, 2-a-days.
But a lot of people can find something in someone they want to watch on the internet. You scroll, you find someone that is funnier and is more well-read on something you want to learn about or talk about. So they
Well,
can't
the internet is for micro niche audiences.
They can't compete.
That's what the internet is for.
Exactly. SNL can't be as funny
and maybe,
as the internet. You know?
Well, I don't know if that's actually not a fair comparison, because the internet is for micro niche audiences. And we've talked about this in comparing the numbers TV to the internet. It's not comparable. Mm-hmm. You're not doing apples to apples. You're doing apples to oranges. So when you say Joe Rogan has, 20 million viewers, look at that compared to what's watching on cable news. Bottom line is that is apples and oranges. The way those views are counted, they're not the same. But the internet is for niche. And by the way, Colbert may launch a very successful podcast or digital streaming show. He may be successful once he niches himself off and admits, I'm not for everybody. I'm only for whatever it ends up being, a couple 100,000 people on the internet. But if you want to have mass appeal, you might want to listen to someone who had some success like Jay Leno.